One of our flagship products, Gluten Shield, was designed to support people on their gluten-free journey. It's especially beneficial for those just learning about their gluten sensitivity. There's an average 12-week learning curve in that. It was designed to protect from accidental gluten exposure and cross-contamination, as well as to support and protect you during travel or eating out. It was not designed to help you eat more gluten. That's a key. Now, Gluten Shield key ingredients include proteolytic enzymes and something called DPP4. Now, this enzyme has been shown to break down the proline and glutamine bonds in gluten proteins. It also contains a proteolytic enzyme blend designed to help you break down proteins. Remember, years of gluten-induced intestinal and stomach damage can sometimes inhibit that process. It contains carbohydrate-busting enzymes that support the digestion of the starchy components of grains. And it contains a very specialized probiotic called Bifidobacterium infantis. Bifidobacterium infantis is a specialized probiotic strain that has been shown in research studies to aid in the breakdown of difficult-to-digest carbohydrate elements found in grains. It's also been shown with celiacs to reduce intestinal symptoms. It also helps support overall digestion. Now, Gluten Shield also contains an herbal blend for additional digestive support. It contains fennel, which aids in digestion and supports relaxation of the smooth muscle lining the GI tract. It contains ginger, traditionally used for nausea and upset stomach. It's also believed to promote digestion by increasing the flow of saliva, gastric juices, and bile. It also contains peppermint, used to support digestion and to provide relief from GI discomfort. Now, recommended use for Gluten Shield, if you're taking it for daily maintenance, just take 1 capsule with each meal or snack for supporting digestion and daily gluten protection. For enhanced performance, take 2 capsules with each meal or snack for travel or eating out. Now, if you want it for aggressive use, take 3 capsules with each meal or snack. This is best for gluten-free newbies, those who are new to the gluten-free diet and not quite sure whether they're avoiding all of the gluten in their environment. Hey everybody, welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. We're live Q&A today. I'm going to be taking all of your questions as time permits, and so if you've got questions, go ahead and make sure you punch those in to your feed, to your chat now, and I'll do my best to get as many answered as I can within the time. Merry Christmas. This is the week, a few days before it, so I hope that all of you have a very Merry Christmas, and don't forget as well to visit our sponsor, glutenfreesociety.org. If you're new to the show, go check these guys out and sign up for the newsletter there, and you'll get all kinds of free information about how to properly navigate the gluten-free diet. You'll get access to all kinds of videos and archived footage and interviews, expert interviews, as well as articles on in-depth topics related to gluten and disease. So check that out. All right, and then don't forget about our sale this week either. MERRY22, so MERRY 22 is the promotional code that you want to use when you check out. It's for a 15% discount on any supplements or any lab testing. And we have 2 lab tests that you have available to you. One is genetic testing for gluten sensitivity. The other is testing for food sensitivities beyond gluten. So if you haven't checked that out and you want to take advantage of that sale, do so. And don't forget, Ultra Nutrients are back in stock. We've been out now for several months, and so we now have them back in. We're super excited by that because it's our premium gluten-free multivitamin mineral formula. And so make sure you stock up on that if you've missed it. So let's dive into your questions. Let's see here. Is it a bad idea to drink 1 coffee a day while detoxing from mold? It could be. It depends on the brand of the coffee, Lynn. So some coffees are high in mycotoxins or mold toxins specifically. So you want to look for a brand that doesn't have high levels of mycotoxins. Probably one of the better brands out there in terms of coffee that they actually test for mycotoxins in their coffee is Purity. And it's because not only do they test for mycotoxins, but they're also organic. There are some non-organic brands that test for mycotoxins, but again, we want organic and mycotoxin tested, so Purity is one of the better brands for that. Dr. Osborne, please tell us the supplement's name for someone without a gallbladder. Okay, so Mary, that is called Lipogest, Lipogest. And so if you've had your gallbladder removed or gallbladder surgery, or if your gallbladder is malfunctioning, this is a supplement that could support you through that endeavor. Let's see here. From your experience, Gaia wants to know, from your experience, what does make a difference in habits when you have to transition to a gluten-free, grain-free diet? I'm not sure I understand 100% your question, but if you're talking about habitual change, what makes a difference in habits is first is setting the intention. So number one is set your intention that it's what you want to do. Number two, set the intention with others. So number one is set the intention with yourself. In your mind, turn that on, right? And then declare that intention to others so that you can incorporate the people around you who care about you the most into your plan, right? Because you don't want them fighting you when you're trying to change your diet. You don't want every time you're trying to go gluten or grain-free, somebody handing you a cookie, especially this time of the year at Christmas. So declare your intention to those who you love and care about so that you can, basically enroll them into your army of support so that they know that you need their help to try to maintain your diet. And so doing those two things will set you up for a strong start. And then beyond that, habitually speaking, have a habit where you are hunting for food that is grain-free so that you can, one of the biggest learning curves to going on a gluten grain-free diet really has to do with what are you going to eat, right? Most people are like, what am I going to eat? And so they get this analysis paralysis around food. So establishing a habit of looking for recipes that you think might appeal to your own taste buds, and then start collecting them. What we did when we originally went gluten-free, and my wife was a part of this, part of my support team, was she would hunt down recipes, and then when she'd cook something that everybody in my family would really enjoy, she would take that recipe, print it out, she'd put it in a binder, and a couple months go by and you've got 40 or 50 really solid recipes that you can go to establish food that you like, but also food that's healthy for you. And so having that helps you establish the habit long term. Don't forget to check out Gluten-Free Society's recipe section. There's hundreds of recipes there that you can search by category: breakfast, lunch, dinner, gluten-free, grain-free, dairy-free, soy-free, etc. So check that out also. Dr. Osborne, are you shipping products to Europe, please? We ship DNA test kits for gluten sensitivity to Europe. That's really the only product currently that we ship to Europe right now. We're working on it. So if you're in the market for DNA test kits, the way you would do that is you'd reach out to our customer service team at glutenology@gmail.com and let them know you'd like them to drop ship you a genetic testing kit. But beyond that, that's the only product right now that we currently ship to Europe. Can gluten sensitivity lead to speech impairment? Yes, it absolutely can. There are a number of research studies that show gluten is a neurotoxin and can damage the brain. And so there are certain areas of the brain where you have to access in order to get a word to your lips. And so speech impediments and speech impairments can come with gluten. It can come with other things as well. I don't want you to think gluten is the only cause, but it's certainly, if you have no other idea as to why you might have an impairment, investigating gluten as a potential possibility is a great start. Discuss genetics in regards to Alzheimer's and the significance of it being an autoimmune disease. So there aren't a lot of great genetics in regards to Alzheimer's. A lot of doctors want to test something called the ApoE4 gene, or ApoE, to see if you have ApoE4 mutation, because it is a gene pattern that predisposes you to Alzheimer's. It doesn't guarantee that you'll get it, but it's, again, it's a predisposition pattern. But even if you have it, the primary thing that you should be doing won't change, right? Because there are 7 things that you should be doing all the time and focusing on all the time. Good food, exercise, sunshine, quality sleep, clean air, clean water, and stress management. So regardless of whatever genes that you have is irrelevant. The behavior that you have, those 7 behaviors, you have to pay attention and focus your attention to those behaviors consistently over time to offset genetic predisposition risk or other variable lifestyle risks that could come your way. As far as it being an autoimmune disease, yeah, there's evidence now that Alzheimer's actually is an inflammatory brain condition caused by an autoimmune process. And so if you go back and understand that there are 4 triggers for autoimmune disease, categorically speaking, food is a trigger, chemical exposures can be a trigger, microbial imbalances can be a trigger, and nutritional deficits can be a trigger. So those 4 triggers in terms of any autoimmune disease, doesn't matter what autoimmune disease we're talking about, those are the 4 categorical triggers that you always want to ask your doctor to measure for you. Let's see. So Gene says adrenals are extremely high. What's the best place to start to alleviate this? I'm not sure what you mean by adrenals are high. If you mean the hormones that adrenal glands are producing, like cortisol and adrenaline, for example, are high, then you have to figure out what's triggering the release of the excessive quantity of adrenal hormone. For most people, there are several different triggers, but one of the primary triggers is stress. And so unmitigated stress. So always check your stress, right? And where a lot of people struggle here is the stress of their relationships, especially this time of the year. But the stress of their relationships can sometimes be overwhelming, and that causes your adrenal glands, which are your stress glands, right, to make more stress hormones. But then there are also chemical stressors. There's, food allergies, food sensitivities can overstimulate adrenal glands. Infection, microbial imbalance can overstimulate the adrenal glands. Certain environmental chemical exposures, like glyphosate, for example, or heavy metals, for example, or mycotoxins, mold toxins, can overstimulate the adrenal glands. And then you also have nutritional deficit. The nutritional deficit make it hard for the adrenal glands to function properly. And so, for example, vitamin C, vitamin B5 are absolutely required for the adrenal glands to help regulate the functionality of the adrenal glands. And the people that have deficiencies of those particular vitamins become what's called stress maladapted, meaning they have a hard time coping and adapting and dealing with stress. There's some things that you can do supportively nutritionally that also might help with it. We have a product called Ultra Adrenal Support, which is a mixture of different vitamins, minerals, and glandulars that help support adrenal gland function. And then there's some adrenal adaptogenic herbs that some people want to take, things like rhodiola and ashwagandha. So these are also things that sometimes can be very effective for people. So hopefully those are good places for you to start. David's asking, have you had any success in helping with supplementation during tapering of a benzodiazepine? Yeah, so 2 things that, in my opinion, everybody who's trying to taper off of whether it's benzos or alcohol or any other addictive medication, vitamin C, 5 grams a day for an adult, 150-pound adult, and niacin, 1 to 500 milligrams a day. Niacin is vitamin B3, and it will, when you take it, if you've never taken it before, it will make your skin flush, really, really hot, and sometimes can make your skin super red and itchy. And so some people, when they take niacin, have a huge flushing reaction, and they actually interpret it as an allergic reaction. It's not an allergic reaction. Niacin vasodilates the blood vessels in the skin, so it pulls a ton of blood into the skin, and that's why you get the warmth and the redness and the itchiness. So don't take it and freak out if you've never experienced a niacin flush before. They're very safe, and there's no harm in a niacin flush. But those 2 things, vitamin C and niacin, can be very, very helpful, supportive for people trying to break addiction. Supplements for dry eyes besides fish oil, castor oil drops into the eyes may be very, very helpful. depending on why your eyes are dry, though, Lorraine. So there's some people have dry eyes because of an autoimmune condition called Sjogren's. And so there's actually an autoimmune attack against the glands, the tear ducts in the eyes, and this is why the dryness occurs. And so understanding why that, if you have an autoimmune problem and that's what's driving the dry eyes, then you have to look at triggers. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record today, but what are the triggers for autoimmune disease? Food, chemicals, microbial imbalance, and nutritional deficiency. Those are the 4 categorical biochemical triggers. So you've got to have those measured and looked at. No amount of supplementation with with nutrients, eye nutrients, etc., will fix a dry eye problem if the dry eye problem is autoimmune in nature. Some really, really different questions today. So Brooklyn says, can you reverse cat allergies? If so, how? And if not, what can ease symptoms? 2 great questions. So in my experience, yes, I've seen people be able to reverse their cat and dog and dander allergies. A lot of times what happens is when a person's diet is not good, right, or their diet is not, it's not what it should be, and they're eating foods that they're sensitive to or allergic to on a regular basis, their immune systems are so busy combating their food that there aren't enough resources in the immune system to combat environmental allergens. And so people become hyperallergenic to things in the environment, like pets and trees and dust and ragweed, etc. So a lot of times when people get their diet dialed in really tightly, the best eating what the right foods for you, then the allergies can actually go away. The cat allergy, the dog allergy, whatever it is. I've seen this happen hundreds of times in people. Now, there are some people that even they're doing their best diet and they still have an allergy. They still have that cat allergy. And in that case, there's some nutritional support that I would encourage anyone struggling with this problem to use. One is a product called Hist Assist. We'll put a link up for you for that. But Hist Assist is a mixture of different ingredients that act as what are called mast cell stabilizers. So mast cells are what release histamine, which is what is responsible for the symptoms of allergy. And so what these nutrients do is they support the membrane around mast cells so that histamine dumping doesn't occur so aggressively. So a lot of people do really, really well with Hist Assist, which again, it's a mixture of different nutrients. So vitamin C and quercetin and bromelain and N-acetylcysteine are examples of some of the nutrients that go into that formulation. Okay. Let's go down on the left.
I think you hit all these because I was kind of going the opposite direction.
Okay. Let's see, we've got another one. Lynn, I have mold issues. Should I treat the sinus also when I start detox for mold? And what should I use? So yeah, I mean, if you're out of mold, if we're in mold and you are having mold problems, it's not uncommon to see people in mold develop mold growth in their sinus cavities. And so to address that, once you get out of mold, can be a helpful thing. One of the best natural ways to support that is the use of a neti pot. Just an old-fashioned neti pot where you take the pot and you put it up into the nose and it runs through your sinuses and it cleans out, helps clean and rinse out your sinuses. If you use a neti pot, make sure that you're using distilled water with a saline solution in it. If you just use the water, you'll dry out your sinuses and it won't feel very good. And some people will add, one of my favorite things to add to a neti pot when you're trying to let's just say be proactive against bacteria and yeast, is something called silver, hydrolyzed silver. We have a liquid silver called Ultra Silver. I can put a link up for you if you'd like. And that's what if I were in that situation, I would put that in my neti pot and I would rinse twice a day through the sinuses to just naturally get any debris or wash out or rinse out any excessive mucus that could be a bed of harboring for mold or yeast overgrowth in the sinus cavity. What's your thoughts on probiotics? Deanne's asking. Everyone need them. How do you know whether they'll help or do more harm to the gut? I like probiotics. I think generally speaking, most people will not do harm to themselves by taking a reasonable amount of probiotics. Now, not everyone needs probiotics. I personally don't take probiotics on a regular basis. I have a pretty robust microbiome when I measure it. And so Plus, I have a garden, and my hands are in the dirt. And it's interesting, the research coming out now on the microbiome and people with gardens, people that garden on the regular, their microbiomes are so much more diverse and so much more strong than people who don't, who live in a very highly hygienic and sanitary environment. So the rule of thumb there is get your hands in the dirt on the regular, and don't be shy of dirt. That's different. I'm not talking about dirt on the airport floor. I'm talking about dirt in your garden with healthy microorganisms and other things that can help colonize you in your gut. So I think the best way to get probiotics on the regular is to live a lifestyle where you're not so hyper-focused or phobic about germs, and that again, gardening's a good way, owning pets is a good way, going outside is a good way to get good exposure to have a healthy, robust microbiome. Also, eating fermented foods like sauerkraut. I don't like sugar ferments, but saltwater ferments like sauerkraut are great, in my opinion, as a source of good probiotic in your diet on the regular. And some people need extra support for probiotics. Typically, the way I help people determine that when they're working with me one-on-one is we actually measure the microbiome so that we can understand whether or not they need them. And if they need them, if they're deficient, if they're not colonizing, then we certainly will select certain species or strains to help support the colonization of their microbiomes back to norm. And so, but most people, there are a few exceptions where sometimes people will take a probiotic and it might cause negative symptoms. And this is typically, in my experience, these are people who are histamine intolerant. And usually people who are histamine intolerant are in mold. So if you are histamine intolerant, have been told you have mast cell activation syndrome, have been diagnosed with chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia, or have a severe chronic urticaria or hive outbreaks, these are all like cardinal signs that you're probably in a moldy environment, and you might not do well with a classic probiotic. What you might do better with in that case is a spore-based probiotic, as opposed to probiotics with kind of common strains like Lactobacillus and Bifidobacter. We have something called Biotic Force, which is a spore-based probiotic. So it's one I use a lot when we have a person who's in a moldy environment and trying to get out of it, but just needs that support in their microbiome until they can make that decision. So Biotic Force is something I would recommend if you found yourself sensitive to probiotics in the past. So Jessica says, I'm curious about your Christmas party. So it wasn't last night. We posted the picture. It was, I think it was a week after the party. For those of you who follow us, on Facebook, would like to know what you ordered. When I go out to eat, I always really order one thing, and that's a ribeye. I can order a steak with no extra sauce or seasoning or any of that kind of stuff. And that's pretty much it. And a lot of times too, and I don't eat out very often. Like I might eat out twice a year. Don't take my posting of that picture as a, hey, Dr. Osborne eats out, I'm going to go eat out too kind of thing. It's very rare, but I will order a steak, and that's pretty much it. So you can also do steamed vegetables if you want to, but part of that is depending on the restaurant, right? Do they offer grass-fed options? Do they offer organic options? So you also have to pick and select and choose, the places that you do eat out, and make sure there's a higher quality of food. At least I would encourage that. Okay, let's keep going down there. Okay, I love this question. So Leah says, hi, Dr. Osborne from the UK. Whilst there are many foods and bitters, etc., that encourage the body to produce hydrochloric acid and enzymes, does long-term use of supplemental enzymes, in your opinion, slow the body's natural production? Gosh, this is such a great question. I don't know who's saying this. Somebody on the internet somewhere, maybe several people, are saying that is the case, and it is absolutely not the case. You can supplement with hydrochloric acid, you can supplement with digestive enzymes. It will not slow down or shut down your own production. The best way I can describe this is, if you've ever been to Texas, southern Texas, or Georgia, the peach country, and had a really, really good peach, right? One right off the tree that's ripe, not those kind you sometimes buy in the grocery store where you bite into them and it's like you break your teeth because the peach is so hard. I'm talking about a really good peach off the tree at its peak. When you bite into it and start chewing it, that peach is releasing its natural enzymes, and it almost melts in your mouth. They're so delicious, too. I'm getting hungry. I want to go get a peach. But those are enzymes. Those are plant-based enzymes that peach is releasing. If you were to eat food every day that had live enzymes in it, which, by the way, fruits and vegetables have live enzymes in them, and so most of you are eating those things every day, that does not suppress your ability to make digestive fluids. Well, neither does a supplement, right? So just because you're taking them doesn't necessarily shut down your pancreas or shut down your GI tract's ability to generate enzymes. Again, I don't know who's saying that, who's out there spreading that rumor, but it's just absolutely not true. Now, that being said, if you have a healthy, robust digestive tract, you shouldn't need to pop a bunch of pills just to be able to digest your food. But many of you are trying to overcome years of gluten-induced damage, and so you're not at that point yet. And it's when you're not at that point that things like hydrochloric acid and a multi-full spectrum digestive enzyme can be extremely, extremely valuable and helpful in your road to recovery. Let's see here. Does the reaction from niacin cause a raised red rash similar to hives? Yes, it can. It absolutely can. That's why a lot of people mistake them for hives. So you cannot be allergic to vitamin B3. So if you're taking just a pure niacin supplement, it's just a pure vitamin B3, and you feel like you're getting hives, it's not hives. It's not an allergic reaction. You cannot be allergic to niacin. It is an essential nutrient required for the function of the body. The body cannot be allergic to it. What can I do to build muscle mass? Christina wants to know. Number one thing, lift weights. If you want to build mass, you have to work your muscle. Your muscle works on the premise of use it or lose it. The more weight you lift, the more resistance you put against the muscle, the more it will respond by trying to grow. Now that's okay. That's maybe the obvious answer, but let's talk about what you can do to ensure that if you are working out, that your muscle will grow and not just get injured. Because this is where a lot of people are, is they go try to work out. They haven't worked out in a long time. They try to work out and they get injured, and then they're like frustrated. When you're working out and lifting weights, trying to build your muscle, you should be supporting your body. And one of the minimum things that you need to do is make sure you're eating enough protein in your diet. Now, the average person needs, when they're working out, 1.5 to 2 grams of protein for every kilogram of body weight. Okay, so if you're 150 pounds, if you're trying to get to kilograms, take your weight in pounds, divide that by 2.2. That will give you your weight in kilograms. Then multiply that number by 1.5. That will give you the floor of your level of daily protein that you need. And so start with food. Start with just making sure you're eating enough protein to support your body's ability to recover and repair and regain that muscle. Now, there's some other supplements that can be very, very helpful if you're trying to build mass as well. 3 of my favorite. Number 1, pure creatine monohydrate, which is just a powdered supplement. Now, they make all kinds of creatines if you're looking in the market to buy them, but most of them come in like powder that you drink, and it's got like fruit punch and corn sugar and all kinds of nonsense in it. So you just want pure white crystallized creatine powder. And then what you do is you mix that in water, drink it like a shot, and then you can eat like a half piece of fruit, chase it with a half piece of fruit, and that's going to push that creatine into your muscle tissue after you work out. And creatine can be very, very effective at helping you build more mass. There's 2 other supplements. One is L-glutamine. L-glutamine is the first amino acid that's lost when you're working out. So the muscle loses L-glutamine very quickly during a workout, and so after a workout, you want to replenish that glutamine with supplementation. What it'll do is it'll help your muscle restore faster, and it'll help prevent the soreness of a workout. Because a lot of times you work out, especially like on leg day, people do TikTok videos about leg day where they're hobbling around because their legs are so sore. Those people should be taking creatine, and they should be taking L-glutamine. And if they did those things, they probably would be a lot less sore and be a lot more functional. The third supplement is something called BCAAs, branched chain amino acids. There's 3 of them. They're valine, leucine, and isoleucine. And we have a product called BCAA. And so taking that post-workout, again, these are 3 amino acids that help repair and rebuild the muscle and help you to grow. They stimulate muscle growth. So those 3 things combined with weight training are the best ways that you can build muscle mass, simply put. Oh, I like this question. Can you give us any ideas on healthy food for dogs to replace their gluten-filled diets? Yeah, I'm a big fan of feeding your dog the way you eat. You know, we've always been told don't give the dog table food, especially like bones. And I agree, you don't want to give your dog any cooked bones because the cooked bones can splinter and pierce the throat or pierce the intestine and kill your animal. That being said, you can give your dog raw bones. A lot of people don't realize that. If you've ever cooked a chicken and you take the raw chicken itself, and you ever notice the bones in the chicken are bendy. They're not. If you snap them, they don't break and create sharp shards. They're pliable, right? And so dogs can eat that. Dogs produce so much stomach acid they can devour a raw bone. And so in my own dogs, I have a German Shepherd, 95 pounds, a big dog. He gets a turkey neck for dinner every night. Turkey neck full of all the turkey neck bones and the meat. And then we also feed something called tripe, and tripe is the intestinal, it's a mixture of tripe, which is the contents of the intestine of ruminant animals combined with organ meats, so things like liver and spleen and kidney and other organ meats, heart tissue as well. So we feed our dogs raw. Now, even my Yorkie, my 6-pound Yorkie gets a raw meal. She gets a little tiny chicken neck every day, or sometimes a chicken wing, and then and it's raw. Again, raw meat is okay, but cooked meat is not. And then beyond that, she gets the tripe and organ meat mixture. Again, it's raw food. I believe in feeding dogs raw because natural dogs eat raw, and they are predominantly carnivorous, and so you don't want to give them a bunch of kibble that's loaded with tapioca starch, which a lot of the grain-free dog foods, even they're still kibble. A lot of them, they just replaced all the wheat and the corn with tapioca or pea starch, and that's not good for dogs either. So I don't really recommend as their primary source of food anything other than raw. And if you do that, your dogs will be vibrant and healthy. If you feed your dogs kibble, you can pretty much guarantee that at a certain age they're going to start developing diseases like liver disease and kidney disease and even cancer. So I'm not a fan of, just like you wouldn't eat kibble every day from a bag that was just compressed, highly processed food and expect your own health to be prosperous, your dog won't be prosperous either feeding them those things. Let's see. So I think I answered this, but do you have Ultra Nutrients back in stock? And the answer is yes. Actually, I got a bottle right here. This is my own personal bottle. I love it. I love Ultra Nutrients. It's my favorite supplement. It's one thing I will not go a day without taking. How do you test your microbiome? Usually, Deanne uses stool samples, and there are different technologies and platforms. The way I do not recommend testing your microbiome is through PCR. A lot of these online tests that people buy are PCR tests. They're not super accurate, in my opinion. They give you a total mixed bag. I've done this. We've done blinded testing where we've sent in samples of people, the same sample from the same person, just cut it in half and sent it as 2 different names, and we got back huge variance using PCR analysis for the microbiome. My favorite technology platform is something called MALDI-TOF, which is a type of mass spectrometry. It's a laser-assisted mass spectrometry. It's a lot more accurate when you're trying to get a breakdown of a person's gut bacteria. Let's see, anything else there? Okay, Linda says, I'm 71 and taking 5 Ultra CalMag and multi-nutrients and still having bad leg cramps at night. So do I need to increase the magnesium or switch to the other form without the calcium? You could try either one. You might also make sure, Linda, that you're not electrolyte depleted, depending on your water and what you actually drink. If your water is reverse osmosis and you're not adding electrolyte back to it, that can sometimes be a trigger for cramping. Caffeine can be a trigger for cramping as well. So if you're drinking coffee or drinking teas and you're still cramping, even though you're taking the electrolytes, the calcium, the magnesium, the potassium, and the salt, then you might consider you might consider cutting all caffeine out for a couple of weeks and seeing if it goes away. Beyond that, there are a lot of other things that can cause cramping. And so this may be a smart time for you to get with your doctor or to get with a good functional doctor and have your micronutrient levels checked, but also to have food sensitivities checked, because food sensitivities can also cause restless leg and cramping in the legs and feet as well. So it's not just calcium or magnesium sometimes, and pig out. So I would feed my horses probably grasses for the most part, because that's what horses eat in the wild. And then maybe an apple here or there, because, horses like apples too, and I don't think there's any harm done there. Let's see here. Dennis says, Dr. Osborne, you said that Pedialyte is no good because it has high fructose corn syrup, but here in Canada it has dextrose instead. Is that any healthier? No, you don't need sugar to restore your electrolyte balance. Sugar is a delivery vehicle to make it taste good, but you don't need sugar to do that. You can add salt to your water. We actually have a product called Ultra Electrolytes. I'll post a link in the feed for you. And that particular product it's a mixture of ionic trace minerals and electrolytes, and you just add this to the water, and this will hydrate you. This will work as good as any Pedialyte formula without all the garbage. Dextrose, remember, is sugar, and depending on where that dextrose is sourced from, some dextrose is sourced from corn sugar, and although it may not be high fructose corn syrup, you don't want, if you're trying to maintain a grain-free diet, you don't want corn dextrose in your diet. Really, even if you're not following a gluten-free diet, you just want to be healthy, you don't want to drink liquid sugar. It's just not a good idea. Let's see, did you post that on the YouTube feed as well?
I did.
Okay.
It hasn't popped up yet.
Okay. I've joined the group this month and ecstatic to be here, says Maria. Having difficulty with swallowing as well as gut issues. I use vitamin mineral supplement patches. What's your opinion on patches? Throw them away. They don't work very well. That's my opinion on patches. If you're having a hard time swallowing, there are several different things that you can do. And one of the things I would encourage you to do is to take, if you're buying, depending on your supplements, one, make sure they're gluten grain free. And again, for that, you can always go to Gluten Free Society and know you're getting the best. But a lot of our products are made with the twist caps. So you can twist the capsule and dump the powder into a smoothie. And you can blend that up and drink it, and that's the way I would do it. Patches, the reason I don't recommend patches is, one, you're going to get crummy absorption. The skin's job is not to absorb nutrients so that you can be well nourished, but it is the job of the gut. And remember that about 40 to 50% of the nutrition that feeds your gut and makes your gut healthy again has to come through the gut, meaning you have to eat it. And so this is where it's always better to supplement orally. I prefer oral supplementation over IV nutrition. I prefer it over patch nutrition or any other form of nutrition. Parenteral nutrition, which is to dump food directly into the stomach through a tube. Like, I prefer oral always. If oral is available, where a person is not so sick where they may need a boost of IV. But there are rare occurrences where IV nutrition can be super helpful, like somebody with cancer would be an example there. But if we're talking about a person that's just trying to restore and improve their health overall, oral, you should be able to do that. And if you have a problem swallowing, just break the capsule open and dump the powder into food. Mix that up. You can mix it into stews and soups, things like bone broth, and then you can drink it. And that way you don't have to worry about that problem swallowing, and you can still get the benefit to your GI tract, because that's really what you want. You want that direct benefit of the nutrients bathing your GI tract, because that's where the magic happens. And welcome to the group. Let's see here. What would your suggestion for something to leave out for Santa that's better for him than cookies and milk? It's your pick. I mean, leave Santa out a ribeye. If I were Santa Claus, that's what I would want. I would want a ribeye and maybe a really good glass of bubbly water if you're trying to tickle my fancy. But you can do grain-free cookies. My wife has a really good recipe. I shouldn't say this because then you're going to all ask me to post it. But it's a mint cookie with almond flour and a little bit of arrowroot flour, I think, in it, but it's absolutely fantastic. And I might leave something like that out for Santa. You can go to Gluten Free Society, and we have several different cookie recipes that you can tap into that are grain-free, and those could be options for Santa as well. As far as the milk and any other beverage, water should suffice. I mean, Santa, you know, with all that cold weather, would probably do better with a glass of water than a glass of milk anyway. What would be your suggestion for something? Oh, okay, got that one already. Hello, Doc. Do taking methyl vitamins cause anxiety? They can, if you get the dose too high. So like methylcobalamin would be an example, methylfolate, where if you take too strong of a dose for the person, that actually could drive them toward more of an anxiety. The other reason why we'll see methyl vitamins cause anxiety is if a person is basically full of toxins. One of the most common times that we'll see patients react aggressively to B vitamins that are methylated is when they have a mold issue. So if there's mold in their home, and it has to do with methylation. When you take methylated B vitamins, it primes your detoxification pathways to speed up. And if you're in mold, right, what you're basically doing is you're mobilizing all the toxins that your body has tried to store away to protect you from them, and then you're still being exposed by the environment. So you're doing double duty, getting exposure, and that's where that anxiety can be driven pretty hard. So, you know, this is to any of you, if you take B vitamins and you have high anxiety and you can't tolerate any, you probably should get a mold inspector to come out and rule out mold in your home. It's a very, very common thing, and it's a very, very common side effect of methylated B vitamins. Hi, Doc. Mario wants to know, what can cause severe brain fog when a woman is on her period? May it be due to any vitamin deficiency? Yeah, so several things. One, the brain fog for a lot of women on their period is loss of blood. You know, especially with a heavy cycle, you lose all that iron when you lose all that blood, and so iron deficiency causes anemia, which can cause severe brain fog. It's very, very common. So I would look at, you know, especially if the cycles are heavy, I would look at possibly. You know, if you're a female and every month you have a very heavy cycle, you might consider like the week before your cycle to do some low dose iron or eat extra liver or organ meat to get more iron in your diet to prepare you for that blood loss, to try to avoid that transient anemia that oftentimes will come during a cycle. Let's see, Sylvia says, hi, Dr. O, how can I eat more calories for weight gain without eating junk? I can't seem to hit my minimum calorie needs. You know, meat. Meat is super rich in fat, super high in protein, super rich in calories. Organ meat, you know, I don't know if you're eating enough of those things, but that's where I would look to get bang for buck, higher calories. One of the other ways to get more calories overall would be to use like avocado would be a good source of high fat calorie that you might tap into. You know, if you're doing any kind of smoothies or shakes, you can, you know, dump a couple of tablespoons of, you know, olive oil, extra virgin, cold pressed olive oil that's organic in there, and that can get you a little bit of extra calories. But yeah, if you're having a lot of my experience is people that are having a hard time gaining weight, it's usually because what they're eating is at odds with their biochemistry, and so their body, instead of being nourished by some of the food they're eating, their body is attacking the food, and so they have a really, really hard time putting weight on. I see this all the time. It's very common in kids who aren't growing. There's a condition called FTT, failure to thrive, and so it can be very, very dangerous, especially in infants where they're not growing. But when you get into you know, adults and even younger kids where food is the problem and they don't even know it, we'll see an impossibility at putting on muscle and putting on weight gain because the food they're eating is inflammatory. And when you eat inflammatory food, it drives up your cortisol. Cortisol is a catabolic steroid that breaks your muscle tissue down. So it makes it impossible to put on new muscle, makes it impossible to put weight on because you're constantly breaking your body down. So I would, you know, consider getting some food sensitivity testing done if you haven't already. And I would also, if you're not grain-free or gluten-free or don't even know whether going gluten-free is the right move, consider getting tested for gluten and taking appropriate action. Let's see. Why would there be calcium oxalate crystals found in urine? So two big reasons, actually three. Number one, you're over-consuming oxalates during the spring when everything's coming out of the garden. You know, the fresh greens, it's predominantly fresh greens are very rich in oxalate. And so sometimes, and we see this a lot in vegetarians or people that eat heavy plant-based diets, especially in the spring, they'll get oxalate poisoning, too many oxalates in the food. Number two, you have a microbiome deficiency. There are certain bacteria that you should have in your GI tract that help you break down oxalates from the food that you're eating. And so a lot of people with a history of antibiotic use, there's that potential that you can wipe out those bacteria that help you break oxalate down. Certain species of Bifido and Lactobacillus can break down oxalates. There's a type of bacteria called Oxalobacter that breaks down oxalates. So again, history of antibiotics or pesticide use to the GI tract causing deficits in the microbiome. We'll see oxalate build up in the body and come out as crystals. The third reason would be you have a yeast overgrowth. Yeast have a biochemical pathway whereby they can actually create oxalates. And so like a candida, like a vaginal yeast infection or a gastrointestinal yeast overgrowth, oral thrush, these are areas where if you have that going on, these yeast have the ability to create and produce oxalates, and so then those oxalates can end up getting into your bloodstream and then showing up in your urine as crystals, increasing your risk for the development of kidney stones, which is one of the biggest problems associated with high oxalate. Now, high oxalates can also cause a host of inflammatory problems because these are like little glass shards, right? So if you have super high oxalates, these little glass shards, they can lodge into your muscle tissue, they can lodge into your joints, creating basically an inflammatory shredding effect, so you can develop joint and muscle pain and other problems as a result of high oxalate. But get those three things checked. Takesha says, Merry Christmas. Thank you, you too. I have hyperthyroidism. My T3 and T4 have returned to normal, but my TSH is low. How can I increase my TSH naturally and get off of the carbamazole? You got to change your diet, Takesha, because one of the big factors involved in Graves' disease, which is hyperthyroidism, is you're producing antibodies that can mimic thyroid hormone. And so it will drive you into a hyperthyroid state, causing your TSH to drop. So even though your T4 is normal, you could still be making antibodies that mimic T4. And so in order to get that autoimmune antibody component under control, you have to support the immune system by identifying the potential triggers. The first trigger, again, broken record, food, chemicals, nutritional deficiencies, microbial imbalance. Those are the things you need to work with your doctor. Ask your doctor to measure categorically whether you have those issues and then work on them. So if you're reactive to certain foods, you can remove them from the diet. Gluten is a major culprit, though. If you're not gluten-free at this point, gluten can be a major culprit in Graves' disease. I've seen that be the case many, many times. So Yesenia is asking, interested in getting genetic gluten sensitivity test for my daughter. Can I use this result if positive for school to give proper meal plans for her? Yes, you can. Dr. O, in your opinion, what is the maximum amount of I guess you mean milligram, mg, and milligrams of selenium that one could take daily? You know, if you're not monitoring it, I would say probably don't go over 600 milligrams a day supplementally, and probably even don't go over 400. 600 would be the maximum amount I would recommend if you're not monitoring it. You'd want to keep your eye on it to make sure you're not creating problems. Too much selenium can cause hair loss and can cause nail dysfunction, so your nails will start splitting and peeling. So you've got to be careful. You know, that you know, especially if you're doing it over long periods of time. Now, if you did it for a week, it probably wouldn't be a big deal at all. But if we're talking about a year, 6 months, a year in, and you're taking 1,000 milligrams a day or something, don't do that without monitoring. 2 of my sons are carrying up to 15 pounds of edema in their legs. I was discovered to have HLA-DQ alpha 105. Is the edema caused by ingesting even a small amount of gluten? It can be. It absolutely can be. That's not to say that there aren't other causes for edema. There certainly are, but gluten can be a trigger. So if they tested genetically positive, then you might just encourage them to change their diet and see if that has a better outcome for them. David says, gluten-free is so important. I do have a question that I would like to have your thoughts on. Are there any supplements that are helpful or can be used when doing a binge? I think I answered that one earlier. Maybe it was asked on both platforms. But again, if you're trying to taper off of a drug addiction, 2 supplements I always recommend for support: vitamin B3 and vitamin C. If one eats very late, could a gentle walk help with speeding digestion to avoid having too much food prior to sleep? It could. It's not so much that a walk is going to stimulate digestion unless the walk is calm and relaxing and somewhere peaceful, in which case it could. Remember, what's important to expedite or help with digestion is being at peace. So if a walk gives you peace, then it could be very helpful. If sitting back and reading a book gives you peace, that could be very helpful. If having a nice conversation after dinner with somebody you care about gives you peace, then that could be helpful. So it's not necessarily just a walk, but if a walk stresses you out and you have achy knees or achy joints, then probably not something that is going to help with your digestion. Let's see, DC, for healing digestion, microbiome, and candida overgrowth, is a quality source of A2A2 raw milk from Guernsey cows helpful? No, I wouldn't use it. Now, some people would argue the point that A2A2 raw milk would be just perfectly fine. But what I've seen in 21 years of practice is that people who are new to the gluten-free diet and on their initial healing journey will react to dairy. And so this becomes an issue, can be a very, very big issue. So if you're trying to go gluten-free and your body looks at dairy as if it's very similar to the way it looks at gluten, and it's still creating an immune response or immune reaction, then dairy, in my opinion, would be a bad idea, even A2A2 raw. Generally what I do for people, or I encourage people to do when I'm working with them, is if they're gluten sensitive and they're just learning about it and just starting on the diet, we keep dairy out for at least 6 months, that first 6 months, to get the immune system through an entire turnover. Remember, your immune cells have a 6-month life cycle. So if we keep that out for 6 months, you have a brand new lineup of immune cells that are coming on board, and those new immune cells may be calmer than the last set, and so there may be less of an opportunity or less of an aggressive nature of those immune cells to want to react to that dairy. But generally speaking, I recommend people keep dairy out of their diet until they're healed. Is a sun lamp a reasonable substitute for those of us stuck in the upper Midwest where we don't see actual sunshine for days or weeks at a time? Yeah, I definitely, if I lived up there, I would have a sun lamp, no doubt about it. I actually have one anyway, and I live down here. So a sun lamp is very reasonable, and I think a good investment if you're trying to keep your vitamin D and your melatonin stabilized during those long, harsh winters. What's my opinion of DNRS program helping to overcome chronic illness? I don't know what DNRS is. It's an acronym. I'm not familiar with it. So maybe you could elaborate and I can give you a better answer. So what's the difference between coconut sugar and cane sugar? The myth is that coconut sugar doesn't spike blood sugar. I would disagree with that. I think any sugar from any plant is going to spike sugar. Now, some more so than others, and certainly cane sugar, we know, does that very aggressively. But coconut sugar is not without its faults. I think a lot of people substitute coconut sugar as a healthier alternative to sweeteners, and I think at the end of the day, if you're doing that occasionally, it's not a big deal. But if you're doing that all the time and you're justifying eating a lot of sweet because it's made with coconut sugar, I think you're gonna have a problem on your hands before too long. Is there a way to reduce lymphedema? Already removed all grains, rices, lectins, dairy, processed foods, and nightshades, potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants. Is lymphedema curable? Yeah, it can be. I mean, there are strategies. I mean, it sounds like you got your diet dialed in, but the question I would ask is, have you had tests done to help you determine what other foods you might need to remove? Because you've removed what we would call the gambit of foods that are super common to contribute to an autoimmune process, but there could be some other foods that you're reactive to that you haven't removed, and so in that regard, that could still be stimulating or contributing to that valve damage that's leading to the lymphedema. The other thing that's important, at least initially, is elevation. And I know this is going to sound very cliche because this is usually the standard medical advice, but it's elevation of the feet above the heart so that you allow that fluid to basically be resorbed. And then the other would be, compression of the lower extremity oftentimes can be helpful. The other big taboo thing to do with lymphedema is don't sit all day in a chair. Sitting all day and standing in one place for long periods of time are big no-nos for lymphedema. You want movement. Movement is critical for lymphedema and reabsorption of that excessive fluid. So doing things like rebounding trampolines might be very helpful, and even just walking, to toleration. But definitely the worst thing you can do is sit all day or stand in one place all day. Let's see here. What's the upper limit of daily supplemental lithium? I mean, I would just say this: if you're taking supplemental lithium, you should be getting your levels tested, period. Lithium can be very, very beneficial and helpful in a lot of ways for a lot of folks, but I just don't recommend, jumping on long-term lithium use without actually having your levels monitored. But I would agree. Daily limit of 20 milligrams is not a bad place to keep it, especially if you don't have supervision. Is it possible to heal hemorrhoids, or do they require surgery to correct completely? It depends on how severe they are and how aggressive they are. So, I mean, it is possible, right? It's very possible to heal a hemorrhoid. It's just that if you have a severe extruding hemorrhoid, it can be harder to heal. The first thing you have to do to heal hemorrhoids, though, is get your diet right. Because if your diet's not right, it doesn't matter what you attempt with supplementation. I mean, there are a lot of things that can be helpful for shrinking a hemorrhoid, and one of them is witch hazel, which is a natural ingredient. But you've got to get your diet dialed in. But yes, it is possible. Donna says, do you have any idea what to do about extreme itching all over the body? I have an overgrowth of Candida glabrata and nothing seems to work to get it under control. If you're trying and you're going after a known and speciated cultured type of Candida and you can't win, it's probably because you have other variables and factors that you haven't identified yet that are going to be important for you to identify. One of the things that a lot of people with stubborn yeast overgrowths that can't get rid of, it's because again, I've said this before, they're living in mold. Mold is an immunosuppressant, so it suppresses the immune system's capacity to help you fight and battle against microorganisms that don't belong or that are growing out of control. And so that's a very, very common scenario when people have been trying to battle it for a long time and are not winning the war. So you might want to just look at environmental mold as another potential possible trigger. There are other environmental triggers, and one of the others is nutritional deficit, is not having adequate nutrients. So you might want to get your micronutrient tests done with your doctor and see if there's something that you're missing, an ingredient, a key nutritional ingredient that might help your immune system better support you in battling against that Candida. I have a non-cancerous growth on my thyroid and fibroids in my uterus. I just started taking iodoral 12.5 and buffered vitamin C. Will this make things go away? Don't know. Time will tell you, Tony. Some fibroids are caused by iodine deficiency, and I have seen iodine do wonders, for uterine fibroids, but also for problems with breast tissue, fibrocystic breast disease, and growths in the thyroid. I mean, some thyroid diseases are caused by iodine deficiency. So, it's hard for me to tell you, yeah, that's going to work, because I don't know anything else about you, and I don't have any other details or data. But I would say if you're battling cancer, and you're not working with a really good practitioner with great experience, you should prioritize that. Give that as a gift to yourself for Christmas and prioritize it. What do I think of small shots of colloidal silver daily? Not a fan of colloidal silver as much as I am a fan of hydrolyzed silver. Hydrolyzed silver is a lot safer. It's water soluble. It won't turn you gray. And it's just something I prefer over a colloidal. So in that regard, do what you will with that information. What's the best magnesium complex supplement? Ultra MG, Christina. I'll put a link up below and you can go read more about it and learn more about it. People need to be aware, even ordering steak and steamed vegetables. Oh, so this is just a commentary, probably what I said earlier. The cook still puts on pats of butter even if asked not to. Yeah, that's true. That's the risk you run at eating at a restaurant. Thanks for chiming in, Pamela. I mean, you're absolutely right. This is one of the reasons why I try not to eat out. It's just such a rare thing that I do. And I'd encourage all of you to make it rare as well, or not at all. Have had some people say that using boric acid in the ears helps to kill off the marcons from mold. Do you know anything about this and how to use it? It wouldn't be what I would suggest. And I don't agree with what a lot of people say about marcons for mold. For those of you that don't know, marcon stands for multiple antibiotic resistant coagulase negative staphylococcus. It's a type of antibiotic resistant staph infection, if you will, that can colonize the sinuses, especially from immunocompromised people who are living in mold. My experience with marcons generally is neti pots and silver do wonders to support a person's immune system to be able to recover, provided they're not still in the mold. So the number one factor I see is that it's get out of the mold first, because there's no amount of anything that you can do, prescriptive or natural, that is going to be helpful if you're still in the mold. What nutrients help prevent spontaneous gingival bleeding? So if you're already taking 3 grams of vitamin C a day, I would ask, is it a powder form of vitamin C? And I would make sure it's a powder, solubilized powder, buffered powder versus, say, a capsule. If you're trying to get gingival bleeding under better control. Number 2, there are a lot of different things that can cause the breakdown of collagen leading to gingivitis or bleeding gums. One of them is copper deficiency. Another one is collagen deficiency or protein deficiency in general. You could also have, depending on your past dental history, if you've got root canals in your mouth, you could have infections that are brewing in those dead teeth, and that can lead to gingivitis as well, which, no amount of vitamin C or any other nutrient is going to help with that problem. So one of the things you can do with the dentist, if you've got, a history of oral health issues, is get what's called a cone beam x-ray to help identify some of the sub-infections that could be underneath the tooth that could be driving the gingivitis, because bacterial imbalances in the mouth can do that as well. Avoid caffeine if you are trying to clean up gingivitis, and avoid, because caffeine can be an irritant to the gum lining. And you want to just make sure you're also on a really high quality multivitamin. You'll catch a lot of stones, or catch a lot of birds with the same stone if you're taking a really strong, good quality multivitamin. It may not be the solution, but it certainly won't hurt you. But that needs deeper analysis. Right, so I would say you're at a point, if you're not solving it with a few different supplements, you really should get with somebody and have a deeper analysis done. Are polyphenols both water and fat soluble? Generally, polyphenols are water soluble. Let's see, same question. I need a magnesium complex. What's the best one to take? Ultra MG. Did we post that link for Ultra MG?
Yes.
Okay, so Takesha, look below in the feed. We posted that link. It's Ultra MG. What's the ideal max amount of vitamin C post-workout without blunting the adaptation benefits that come from exercise? There's not one. I think it depends on how aggressive you exercise, how much you weigh, what your current status of vitamin C in your body is. I mean, I've got some people who are so saturated with vitamin C that 500 milligrams makes them run to the bathroom because they hit bowel tolerance. I've got other people that are so unsaturated that they need upwards of 3 to 5 or more grams. So I don't think there's an ideal amount, and especially as far as like blunting the adaptation benefits from exercise. I would say if you're worried about blunting that effect, then take the vitamin C later on in the course of your day. Is pea protein gluten warrior safe? Yeah, we actually have a pea protein. It's an organic one for people who are people where a vegetarian diet is a better match for their genetics, we have something called warrior protein, which is an organic pea protein, again, for those trying to stay vegetarian. So it's safe. It's pre-digested with enzymes in it too. So it's generally like, so a lot of people fear the legumes and the lectins and the difficulties with digesting them, but warrior protein doesn't have those problems. Is Prozac bad for a child with OCD? Look, I would never in a million years ever sanction, if it were my child, I'll just speak on my own behalf, I would never in a million years sanction giving my child Prozac, ever. I think it, in my opinion, would be a huge mistake, and it would be hugely suppressive of their growth and mental development. If your child has an OCD problem, you need to figure out why. And Prozac is not why. Kids don't have OCD because they have a deficiency of Prozac. They have OCD. It's such a complex thing. There are a lot of reasons. There are psychological reasons. There are social reasons. There are chemical reasons. There are physical reasons. I've seen people with OCD who didn't get enough exercise physically, and so they develop a pattern of behavior in their brain to expend the energy that they're not expending physically. So, there are just so many variables in that. That's something I would suggest you get with a good functional practitioner and get that piece figured out, because you should, in my opinion, kids should not be medicated. The kids today it's abuse, the way I see it. So many of them are being thrown on drugs that they shouldn't be thrown on. Perfect example of this is Adderall. Adderall, which is basically legalized cocaine through the prescription pad, it is a huge stimulant that we're putting so many children on so that they'll focus and concentrate in school. When in reality, we need to change the way schools are teaching. We don't need to change the biochemistry of a child's brain that is currently trying to develop and evolve and understand the world. We need to change the one-size-fits-all approach to teaching, just like we need to change the one-size-fits-all approach to medicine. This one-size-fits-all approach to scalability of all the things in our society and culture today are huge problems, right? And so think of how many of you have your own uniquenesses, your own unique learning style. Some people are more audible, some people are more visual, some people are more hands-on and tactile. Your child is going to have a unique style and pattern, and if you put your child in a school that doesn't accommodate for that unique style or pattern, what ends up happening is that child gets a diagnosis and then gets drugged into submission to fit in with culture. And I think it's just a terrible, terrible tragedy that we have so much of that going on. So anyway, there's a long answer for a short question. What are the causes of low white counts, low white blood cells and neutrophils? Lots of things. You could have B12 deficiency, folate deficiency, zinc deficiency, vitamin D deficiency, mold exposure, heavy metal exposure, gluten sensitivity. A lot of different things can affect the ability for the bone marrow to produce blood cells. Is a TENS unit useful to restore muscle? No. TENS units are passive. It's a great question, Ivan. TENS is more designed for pain. So TENS sends a current into the muscle that interrupts the way the nerve in the muscle perceives pain. And so it creates an electrical interference signal that can help with pain. So like a lot of people that use TENS units have a chronic musculoskeletal condition that they're being treated for to try to mitigate, and they're using it like aspirin. They're using it as pain management. But TENS, it can stimulate the muscle. Now there's another electrical frequency called muscle stem, or just E-stem, which will stimulate the muscle better than TENS. But even stem like that is not something that will rebuild your muscle. Where we would use stem in somebody is, let's say they had a stroke and their muscles atrophied, and we're putting stimulators on the muscle that atrophied because by itself it won't work, and so we're trying to use electrical stimulation combined with the brain to reactivate and re-engage that muscle. That's where it might be helpful. But if you're talking about just like putting a TENS or stem unit on a muscle and think that muscle's going to grow because you're running electricity into it, it won't. It's a passive modality, meaning that passive modalities, generally speaking, do not stimulate improvement or growth of muscle tissue. What does is active, right? So you using the muscle, you using your neurological pathways to engage that muscle versus you using an extraneous or an external stimulator to try to drive electricity into the muscle. Generally speaking, TENS units don't improve digestion, and no, you don't necessarily need to take electrolytes before using a TENS unit. A lot of TENS questions. Placed a big order this morning for the yummy pure protein powder and vitamin D. Can you comment on how much protein a person should consume? So I answered this earlier, but I'll answer it again, Mary. It's, again, if you're working out, you're trying to build lean mass, your floor of your protein intake should be about 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. If you're trying to just maintain where you're at, 1 gram per kilogram of body weight is probably enough for you to maintain your current status. But I wouldn't go less than that. A lot of doctors will say 0.6 or 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram body weight, and those people are malnourished. It's bad advice. And the research coming out on protein and sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss and bone loss, a lot of the chronic diseases that we're seeing are as a result of protein deficiency. So I'd say the bare for anyone is really about 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. Does high-dose vitamin C deplete biotin? No. What's the upper daily limit of I think I answered that one already. I love you, Dr. Osborne. Well, thank you. I love you too. Any thoughts on healing from idiopathic kidney disease? Well, if it's idiopathic, figure out why you have it. There's no such thing as idiopathic kidney disease. There's just such a thing as doctors who are idiots and can't figure out why you have it. Now, that I'm generalizing there. A lot of idiopathic kidney disease is the same. It's the same group of triggers that cause other illnesses, other chronic illnesses: food, chemicals, microbial imbalance, and nutritional deficit. I've seen it hundreds, if not more than 1,000 times, chronic kidney disease and idiopathic kidney disease, people who were told their kidneys were going out or closing down or shutting off, where they change their diet and their kidneys are restored. So if you haven't entertained diet change, I would really, really encourage you to do that. No Grain, No Pain is a great place to start if you're not working directly with a practitioner. No Grain, No Pain is it's a simple diet change that might save your kidneys. Just a lot of great comments there. I think we're on we're 15 minutes over the hour, so I'm going to wrap it up here. I want to go celebrate my Christmas early, so I hope you guys all have a fantastic Christmas and get some time off, deserved time off, and time to recharge your batteries and spend it with the people that you love the most. Thank you all for all the well wishes that in the comment section. Many of you wished. Just beautiful things you're writing there, and I just really greatly appreciate that. Remember our mission, okay? We're out to save 100 million lives. We know we're being shadow banned. YouTube punishes us every week for talking and telling the truth, and so our channel grows only because you share it. It does not grow because YouTube shares it. So help me save 100 million lives. Share this information with someone you love. Together we can reach more people and affect the world in a more positive way. I'll end on this note. Make sure, please, what makes this show possible is our sponsor, Gluten Free Society. So if you haven't visited, if you haven't subscribed there yet, please go and do that. And don't forget to take advantage of our Christmas sale. It's 15% off. It's our second highest or second best sale of the year, and it's our last one of the year. And if you use promo code MERRY22, MERRY 22, you'll save 15% off all of our supplements, but also all of our lab testing. So if you're looking to get genetically tested for gluten or looking to check out food sensitivity testing, right now is the time to do it because you'll save big time. Those of you who put in an order of $500 or more, we're going to send you a free shirt. So a lot of you were asking about this shirt on gluten-free alcohols a couple weeks ago. We'll send this free shirt to you on any order over $500 or more. So All you have to do once you make your order is reach out to my team at Glutenology and give them your size, and they'll make sure that gets your way, and then you can sport your gluten-free warrior gear with style. So again, Merry Christmas. We'll see you guys in 2023. No show next week, so we'll see you in 2023. Have a fantastic holiday season.